There we go. It's on. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Hope you had a nice break. Yes? And you guys gonna get a break next week? No. You're the Blue Day people, right? So you're here on Monday? Next week? And Wednesday? Yep. And Friday? Yep. And, oh my gosh, yeah. Poor you. So Friday of next week is when we have the quiz. Chapter 17. So be getting ready for that. Would you guys like another one? I don't have it ready for today. Would you like another practice question? Okay, so next time we'll try to remember to get you a practice question. We did last one. You guys did a pretty good job of reading comprehension. So I read some stuff to you, and you're like, oh, I get it. Yes. And then I actually gave you the question from the quiz, and you got that too. So that's good. So you want to come in prepared on that. I noticed many of you guys are taking very, very good voluminous notes, which is a very good thing to have. I know by the time that students of mine had ended up in the senior year, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's like an IB history test. What do I have to, oh, I've got all my notes to study, which is really nice. In fact, next semester, you guys are going to be doing some units. Hopefully, we'll be able to do all 3 of those units, and they're IB history units. So the seniors, actually, I didn't have them as seniors. Students who are in the senior year oftentimes will be able to look back over their notes from 12th grade, 11th grade, even some from 10th grade, and also from second semester, 9th grade, and have those to study and prepare. So it's all in the process. Do you see where this is going to end up? Yeah, someday you're not going to be sitting in these chairs. You will be graduated. Yes. Okay? But next week you're going to have your quiz on Friday. And next week, because it's all kind of funny, how many of you guys are coming in on Thursday of next week for the PSAT? All right. Did you guys get the scoop from Mr. Pettit as far as how that's going to work? Okay. You didn't? Oh, well, let me tell you this. It starts at 8, so the exam starts at 8. You'll need to be there before. And you'll be in your designated room, and it'll finish up at about 11:30, okay? So make note of this, because Mr. Pettit told me this yesterday. I'm like, oh, that could be an issue. Because what are you supposed to do after you finish with the exam? What do you think? Yeah. I think that's a great idea. How many of you guys would like to get a ride and go home? I think that would be a really good idea. Because then you can go home, you can get some food, you can take off your mask, you can get all relaxed, and then if you want to, at that point, or a little bit later, you can watch the video for my class or do any of the other things you're supposed to do for my class, although you could actually do that. Let me see the blue. Never mind, excuse me. We're going to be doing that in class on Wednesday of next week. So on Thursday, if you're still here, this is what happens. If you're still here and you don't have a ride to get home and you're waiting for the bus at 2:45, you go to your 6th period, your 7th period, and your 8th period classes. So you'd be coming in here, but there's a little bit of a problem because I've also got the Green Day students. So there's not enough room for everybody. So then we'd be shipping some of you off to whatever and so forth. And in fact, what would you be doing in here? Well, what am I going to be doing with those guys? Watching the video that we're going to be having for you for home. So the takeaway from this is figure out a way, if you can, talk to your parents and so forth, to coordinate to go home after the PSAT. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, you just go to your classes. So it's kind of like, I mean, I don't want to use this expression, but it looks like, because I was told, yeah, I need to be here with my students 6th, 7th, and 8th. And basically it's like babysitting. I mean, I'll be showing the video that I've already showed for you guys on Wednesday. And I'll be showing you guys one as well on Monday. And the at-home, the green folks and the ones who are at home, they're going to be watching that. So I've got it all figured out. I don't know how your other classes have got it figured out, because it is a bit of a challenge, because teachers, we will not see the green group at all next week. We'll see you 3 times, no big deal. But we won't see them. Yeah, one of the seniors today was like, let me see, I'm here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm also here Tuesday for the SAT. Yep. So, if you can, make arrangements to go home after the PSAT. Those of you guys who aren't taking the PSAT, you're at home anyway. So, you've got that covered. Does that make sense? Did that help a little bit? Because I didn't think I understood it completely until yesterday when Mr. Pettit made sure that I knew that I was going to be responsible for students, 9th graders, 6th period, and then 10th graders, because there's all the 10th graders are taking the PSAT. The state pays for one. If you're taking it this year, your parents paid for it. Next year at this time, all of you will have one paid for by the state, the PSAT. And so there's a lot of 10th graders that are going to be taking it, and hopefully they'll be able to figure things out, because, yeah, I can only have, I think this is my biggest group, 14 students in here. I've got 14 out of 15 desks filled. Okay, so any questions on that? It's like logistical things. What about this? You going to do this? What is this? Do you know what it is? Can you see? I should show the back. It's a map. You guys got any predictions of how the election's going to go? No idea yet? These two people predicted, actually, I think they worked together on this one, because they both had Biden winning in a very close race, and so that's what their predictions were. You guys going to go for it? When do you have to get that turned in by? Yeah, and that actually is a blue day. So November the 3rd is a blue day, so it's 2 weeks from today. Who's going to win? I don't know. Is there going to be another debate? Perhaps. The last debate they ended up canceling because it didn't come through. So Trump and Biden each did a town hall meeting that was televised. But there's one more scheduled debate. We'll see if it takes place. And we are going to have an election 2 weeks from now. And we'll have a president of the United States. Maybe it'll be the same one, or maybe we'll have to figure out how to create a spot next to number 45 there. Honestly, I don't know if have I had discussions with you about this? No? Okay. Because I got some students that are like, Mr. Hansen, what are you going to do about your display of presidents if Biden wins? What do you think I could do? Move them all around. They're taped on the back. Each of them are printed off, and they're taped on the back. What? Start a new row? But there's no room. There's a bookshelf there. That's a lot of work. You get another one? How many guys are okay with having one on the bottom? Because I was just thinking of moving my Uncle Reed's poster a little bit over that way, and then just making that one bottom row just a little bit longer. It sticks out a little bit. You like that? It's a pretty simple solution. You guys okay with that? Thank you very much. It's just really simple. How many guys are like, no, that's not balanced. It's asynchronous. Yeah, exactly. You're like, that would throw me off. Your eyes would be directed. You're like, oh my gosh, Joe Biden is just sort of hanging out over there. I mean, we'd have no problem if Trump gets reelected. Some of you guys are like, I'm for Trump being reelected just for the sanity of Mr. Hansen's wall of presidents, so that there's no discontinuity. I mean, I'm glad you guys didn't actually bring it. Now that I have brought it up, you're going to be like, oh no, this is a problem. We've got to come up with a good solution. I've actually had some students go, I volunteer, I will do this as tribute. I will take this down and I will cut them and make new rows and so forth. Really? That's what I did over here. Look at this. I had all these different flags, and I tried to create some sort of a balance thing, so you can see it's kind of off, off kilter and so forth. I had to actually add a flag in the middle of the Olympic Games one. And I'll throw this problem to you guys later, I think, or maybe it's the 10th grade. I always forget. What would happen if we added another state to the United States of America? What would we do? I mean, my gosh, we've got a wonderful sort of balanced star arrangement on our flag right now. What would we do? Maybe we add one on, like maybe add Puerto Rico and, I don't know, get rid of North Dakota or something. I don't know, or whatever. Combine North and South Dakota. Get rid of what? I'm sorry, what? Just add a little tiny star in the corner, just have like little hanging off and so forth. Anyway, some of these, for people that like me, it's like I like to have like order and synchronicity and things like that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with the presidential election. I'm sure we'll have things to talk about. Yes. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do with the flag? Texas tried to leave the Union once. We'll get to that next semester. There was a whole bunch of states after a presidential election of 1860. Abraham Lincoln was elected, and a bunch of southern states are like, we're out of here. And Lincoln was, I don't think so. We had a war, civil war. We got a whole unit dedicated to that. Was Texas able to leave? They have to stay. Once you join the United States of America, boom, you have to stay. Unless Congress changes its mind. Okay? So anyway, interesting stuff there. We'll see how this all plays out with the presidential election, because it's all very interesting. It's all very important to your livelihood. But in the meantime, unless there's any questions, let's go back to the time that we were looking at. The time of Martin Luther. Martin Luther. Do you like his hair? Do you? Anybody know why his hair is that way? Did he like not go to like a proper barber shop or something? I mean, if you went to a barber shop and they cut your hair that way, what would you do? You're like, what are you doing? You got a wig or something? I don't know, you could just get like a different like multicolored like, changeable hat or something. This was, anybody know, I can give you the answer, but maybe some of you guys know this. Why did he have his hair cut that way? Anybody know? He was a monk. This is true. We got that in your notes, right? You got that in your notes? He was a monk. What kind of monk was he? What religion? He was Catholic. He started out as a Catholic monk. And one of the signs, I forget all the details of it, but is a sign that is a pattern. It's a sign of sort of like your allegiance, your fidelity to the order of monks. And so that would be how they would wear it. And so you shave, your chin, and then you shave your head. And then you leave like a nice little hair ring around it, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't pick the fashion and so forth. So what else do we know about Martin Luther? Let's get to what we know. He was a Catholic monk. Okay? Very good. What else do we know, Marion, about Martin Luther? He disagreed with the Pope. Let's get right to it. He disagreed with the Pope. You guys got it in your notes? What did he disagree with the Pope about? He thought the Pope was corrupting the church? He's going off the Bible. Do you have that in your notes? That Martin Luther was like his version of reading the Bible was not lining up with what he saw the Pope was doing. Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example? Go for it. Stuff? Like a yard sale or something? Oh, what do we call those? There we go, indulgences. Okay, indulgences. Yeah, that was kind of the main gist of it. Did you guys get that takeaway? I was hoping that you would get that. That was one of his really big complaints. He's going to have some other ones. I mean, he's got 95 different things, for goodness sakes, that he is critical of the Pope and what's going on in the Catholic Church at that time. But a lot of it goes to that. All right, so here you've got Martin Luther, who is a monk, and he's very, very much devout, and he's reading the Bible, and he's looking at what's going on around him, and he sees a disconnect. And he's very upset about that disconnect. He sees that the church is raising a lot of money selling indulgences. Now, some people are going to be upset about that for other reasons. Did we get into that reason? What would say, like, for example, we're going to see This guy, John Frederick, you can write his name down. John Frederick, he was an elector of Saxony. In other words, he was the top person in that German region of Saxony. So he was a very, very important person, okay? Among other very important people, he would be like a political leader, and there were other important religious leaders like archbishops and so forth. You guys can answer the question. What about the sale of indulgences was kind of bothering some of those top people, particularly top people in the church? I'm trying to remember if we covered that very clearly with you guys. Was the sale of indulgences by Johann Tetzel and others, was that successful? And where did the money go? To the Catholic Church. Where? Physically. The Pope in Rome. To build what? To build what? Going back here. To build St. Peter's Basilica. Very expensive and beautiful church. So if the money, make sure you write this down. If they're raising a lot of money in German-speaking areas, like around here, and other areas as well, if they're raising a lot of money there and it's going to Rome, how much money is left in those German-speaking areas for their own building projects, for their own, churches and cathedrals? What about it? How many of you guys have siblings? Wouldn't it be nice if we take all the money that's dedicated for you, for your clothes, for your food, for the stuff that takes care of you, and we spend it on your siblings instead? Raise your hand if you think that's a good idea. I volunteer. I volunteer that everything dedicated to me should go to my dearly beloved sister, brother, etc. No? What, you want some of that still to be spent on you? I mean, it's kind of that idea is like there's only so much pie. How many of you guys are like, oh, I'll share my food with you, sibling? No? Here's the deal. If there's not as much money for church-type activities and spending and building projects up here, because so much of it is headed down to Rome, those people are upset. People like John Frederick, Elector of Saxony. Write that down. He and others don't like the fact that all that money is heading to Rome. So they're looking at kind of the bottom line. I mean, you like your siblings, yes, fine, great, but should they get all your stuff? How many of you guys got older siblings that have moved out of the house? Or gone away to college? When they go away to college, what happens to their room? You're like, I'm going to move in. And they're like, no, I want to stay in my room when I come back for breaks. And you're like, we'll see about that. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but this is a very important point because as we go through this and we see how this all shakes out, is this guy going to be very sympathetic to the Pope when Martin Luther is criticizing him? Not so much. In fact, here, take a closer look at this picture. See that guy right there? That's Martin Luther. He's got a very important friend in the top political leader, John Frederick, of that Saxony region that they are from. It's kind of like right in here. Okay? So, getting back to the gist of it. Martin Luther, he's saying that what is in the Bible, what was that again? That the Pope, that if you do something wrong and you need forgiveness, how much do you have to pay for it? According to Martin Luther. How do you get that if you don't pay for it? Yeah? Oh, so stuff like that, how much does that cost? So if you want to, according to Martin Luther and his understanding of what is in the Bible, what does a person have to do to receive forgiveness of sins in order to have a relationship with God, in order to ultimately get to heaven, in order to have all the benefits from that? What do you have to do? Believe. Yeah, the key word is believe. Believe what? Yep, believe that Jesus died for your sins. And he's actually got that kind of like this. there's an interesting word, and he uses this word. Sometimes this word is used in a variety of ways. The word is grace. You can write that down. Martin Luther has an understanding of the word grace. Now, if somebody is walking through a room and they're very graceful, what? Are they going to trip and fall in like a klutz? So sometimes when you hear that person behaves with a lot of grace, it's like a nice fluidity of movement, and they're nice and balanced and so forth. He's not really talking about that. Martin Luther would define the word grace, and you can write this down. He would say that is undeserved forgiveness, or an undeserved gift. You didn't do anything to get that really, really good gift. Right? Do you get gifts? Do you get gifts on your birthday? Do you deserve them? Do you get gifts like at, was it Christmas time? Do you deserve them? Does Santa keep a close list? Do you have siblings that you would say do not deserve anything? You're like, you deserve all their gifts, so they should be redistributed to you. Well, Martin Luther would say, grace is receiving something that you really don't deserve. In fact, there's no way, Martin Luther would say, there's no way that you can do enough to deserve that gift. You could work at it. That's all nice, and that's all fine. But there's no way you could work at something enough in order to deserve that gift. And so what gift is he talking about? That is the big gift, the numero uno gift, yeah? Yeah, and in order to get that, eternal life in heaven and so forth, what do you need to have removed? All the sins. And how do you remove the sins? According to Martin Luther, believing that Christ died on the cross. And so what do you have to do according to Martin Luther in order to get that? That undeserved gift, that grace gift, yeah? Just believe, yeah. Do you have to pay for indulgences? No. Now write this down, because this is where Martin Luther takes it one step further. He basically is saying, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. He's quoting from the New Testament. That is part of the Bible. And so that's what Martin Luther, this is translated obviously into English, but Martin Luther is looking at things like that and going, I don't see where people have to spend money. Yes, sure, if they're walking with Jesus and so forth, that they're doing good things and so forth, but there's no way they could do enough in order to get that wonderful gift. It's an undeserved gift. And this is where it really comes down to the Pope. You ready? He says this. Not only does the Pope not have the authority to give out forgiveness, because it's not the Pope that's forgiving, it's Jesus that forgave. And the Pope doesn't have that authority. Oh, and if he's taking money for it? Oh, that makes it even worse. Write that down. Martin Luther says, Pope, if you're taking money for forgiveness, you are bad. And he doesn't mean just bad. In those 95 Theses, ultimately, Martin Luther, when he comes right down to it, he says, if you're doing something, Pope, that is acting outside of your authority, and you're basically saying you're the one that's giving this really wonderful gift of forgiveness and so forth, and that was already given by Jesus, then you're in league with the other side. Oh, who's the other side? Oh my gosh. The other team is headed up by the Antichrist? What are some other synonyms for Antichrist or other people as far as that team? Satan, the devil, the beast. You can write that down. And he's like, this is some pretty serious name calling here. Basically, Martin Luther is saying, look, dude, if you are claiming to have this authority from Christ and you don't actually have it, you're working for the other team. You are the Antichrist. You're working for Satan. You're working for the hell team. Those are pretty strong words. Do you understand that? I mean, and you look back and you're like, how did it ever come to this? Oh, yeah. We wanted to have a nice church. I mean, there's other things associated with that. We did talk about some of the things that were sort of attached to the Catholic Church and to the papacy and so forth that needed to get kind of fixed and so forth. And many of these things will. Over time, the Catholic Church is going to learn. You need to be very, very careful. Could you go around buying indulgences today? Pieces of paper that say you're forgiven of your sins? No. They don't sell those. Johann Tetzel got a lot of money for it, helped to build a church, helped to build a building, but ultimately it kind of backfired. So let's get into the details of this. All right? Martin Luther, what was the day that he did that? What was the day that he posted his 95 thesis? Yes? October 31st. What year? Yep. 1517. Yep, 1517. Very good. Which is right there. Okay? And so he's like, all right. Now, it's going to be fascinating because if you were Martin Luther and the Pope said, I'd like to have a word with you. How many of you guys, if you were Martin Luther, you'd be like, I voluntarily go to the Pope because I just think, and if we just sat down and had a nice little chat about it, that would, you're shaking your head, you wouldn't do that? Why not? I mean, is it a problem if you've got people who are saying things that are different from what the Pope says is the way that the church is supposed to be run? Well, what could potentially happen to you if you're what's that word? If you're like teaching something within the church, but it's not seen as like okay or correct? What is that word? I think you guys mentioned it last time. What is that word? I hear it. I hear an echo. Heretic, heresy. A person who practices or speaks heresy is a heretic. And what is the fate for a heretic? We're just going to talk to him a little bit. We're just going to talk. Agree to disagree. What? Yeah. This one happened before Martin Luther. And this guy's constructive criticism of the church was much milder. Now you need to understand, because actually in the history of religions and so forth, there had been other people who had criticized and done various different things, and sometimes things changed. But depending on who is in charge, they might be really sensitive. How many of you guys know somebody in your life who's really super sensitive to constructive criticism? And you're like, I'm going to say nothing. I'm just going to keep it to myself. All right? How many of you guys are like, you know people in your life who are cool and open to constructive criticism, and they're actually willing to solicit it from you? Okay, I hope you find somebody if you haven't so far, because that's kind of a cool thing to have. Martin Luther was not really convinced that he was going to be handled in a nice, gentle way. He figured he was going to get toasted. And so Martin Luther never got himself close to Rome again. If he got himself close, you can write that down. Martin Luther basically stayed away from Rome, because that's the Pope's most powerful place. If you come marching into Rome, you're going to be apprehended and you're going to be dealt with. And even some of these areas, not too far from Rome, and sort of what it was called northern Italy or the southern German areas, he was a little bit hesitant there. He basically, from this point on, is going to stick to areas that are safer. The area around his hometown, Wittenberg. And who's going to protect him? John Frederick. John Frederick is going to protect him. Why would John Frederick protect Martin Luther? Think about that. Let's get a volunteer. What is one practical reason for John Frederick to say, you know what? I kind of like this Martin Luther fellow and where he's coming from. What do you think? So if people are listening to Martin Luther and they stop buying indulgences, what's going to happen to all that money headed to Rome? It's going to dry up, right? You can write that down. John Frederick will support Martin Luther. He'll keep him protected. He'll keep him safe, among others. And Martin Luther is not going to be burned at the stake. In fact, Martin Luther is going to live a long, natural life. In fact, there's another step that Martin Luther is going to do. And this is where the whole Protestant Reformation comes. Because at this point, we've been talking about a Catholic monk who's criticizing a Catholic pope. Well, what more could he possibly do than just issue some criticisms? I mean, what could you possibly do? If you had, I hope this doesn't happen in your life, but if you had a serious argument with an authority, say your parents, and you're like, nope, that's it. We got to agree to disagree, and that's it. I mean, what would you do? What would you do? What would happen to you? Would you just leave? What's Martin Luther, what's he going to do? Is he just going to leave? Write it down. He's going to leave. Well, he's not going to physically leave. What's he going to leave? What's he going to leave? If you don't look and say, the Pope is my top person within this particular religion, this Catholic Church, then what are you? Can Martin Luther be a believer in Jesus Christ and not be a Catholic? What is that called? Can he just quit the Catholic Church and be a Christian? Yeah. And what did he say that religion was? Yeah, it's going to be called the Protestant religion, and it basically is, he would say, the Catholics have Christianity wrong, I've got it right. Because he would say, I'm reading the book properly. The Bible, meaning the book. And so therefore, what do you get? You get the Protestant Reformation. This is a big deal. This is what we've been leading to. Martin Luther is the first major person within the Catholic area to say, I'm not following the Pope anymore. I'm not calling myself a Catholic. And then somebody goes, well, does that mean you're a Christian? He goes, how? Yeah, I'm a Christian, but I'm not Catholic. Do you see where you get into? How many of you guys have ever had discussions with somebody about like whether or not something is Christian or Catholic or whatever? I mean, those are interesting conversations, and they get kind of touchy at times. Well, Martin Luther would say, I am a true Christian, and those Catholics aren't. So we agree on some things, but we disagree on other things. What are some of the big things that he says is not true? Write this down, because he would put this in the 95 Theses. He said, who says you got to be Pope anyway? I mean, he literally is like, there's no one position within Christianity that says one person gets to be in charge of it all. He looks at the Bible and he says, I don't see that there. The Catholics respond, and they say, oh, no, 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 no. There is a reason why the Pope is the most important. You guys want to hear it? This is the response, okay? The Catholics would go all the way back to the time of Jesus. Let me see, how many disciples did Jesus have? He had 12, right? There was one that was a little sketchy, right? Judas, and he anyway, and then Jesus on the cross. Before that, though, Jesus had said to, among his disciples, there was one disciple, you can write this down, his name was Peter, okay? Peter, very interesting guy. He was the one that, Jesus really freaked out because he said, you're so with me, but you know what? You're going to deny me 3 times before the day is done, before the cock crows. And he's like, what are you talking about? I would never deny you. I'd never deny you. Well, when Jesus was apprehended and getting beaten and so forth and so on, Peter denied him 3 times. And he's like, uh-oh. Okay? So it's like, whoa. Well, according to the Catholics, Jesus said to Peter at one particular point, get this, you ready? You are the rock upon which I will build my church. Very key statement in the Bible. You, Peter, are the rock, as in really solid as opposed to sandy. You're the rock upon which I will build my church. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what the Catholics would say that means. Are you ready? That Peter, when Jesus is no longer walking around and so forth, that Peter would be the leader of the religion. So that would be the new leader. And so what does that have to do with the Pope? Well, according to the Catholics, Peter went to Rome. in the early years when it was really not too cool to be a Christian, and he was ultimately killed. He was crucified. But before that happened, he was given an important position in Rome among the early Christian community. His title was Bishop of Rome. Okay, well, that's cool. So what does that mean? Well, if he was the Bishop of Rome, and he's the rock upon which the church is built, then maybe he's the most important person. Well, once he's dead, then he's not the most important person. Ah, yes, but what do you do when one religious leader dies? You appoint another. And who is the next Bishop of Rome? Well, then he would inherit all of that authority. Do you see where this is following? And so then the next person is going to be the next Bishop of Rome, and they would inherit the authority and be seen as the top person within the church. What's another name for the Bishop of Rome? Anybody know? It starts with a P and it rhymes with ope. Pope, exactly. Another name for the Bishop of Rome is the Pope. And so the Catholics would say the latest Pope is the latest person who is given that responsibility that was given by Jesus a long time ago to Peter. Right? That's their argument. Martin Luther is like, I don't read it that way. He's like, Peter's really cool and everything and so forth, but I don't read it that way. I think everyone's got different responsibilities and so forth, and I'm going to go ahead and set up a different church. Okay? And guess what his church is called? The Lutheran Church. You can write that down. The Lutheran Church. It's going to be the first of many Protestant churches. And I'm sorry, it's going to get a little bit confusing from here on out because we're going to see a whole variety of different Protestant churches. You're going to run into Anglicans and Presbyterians. You're going to see Calvinists. You're going to see Puritans. You're going to see Quakers. You're going to see Anabaptists. There are going to be all kinds of different ones. What do they all have in common? They're not Catholic. They're not under the leadership of the Pope. And you're going to get some serious fighting going on and some challenges and some people going this way and that way and so forth. And it's like, it's going to get tough. Is there still that division among Christians in the world today? Yes. Is there still a Catholic church? Yes. Are there Protestant churches? Yes. Of course, we have the Orthodox Church, too, over there in Constantinople. Yeah. So let's look at some of the things that are going to come out of this. First of all, John Frederick likes Martin Luther's new church. You can write that down. He likes the new Lutheran church. And you can be cynical and go, yeah, he likes the new Lutheran church because all the money stays in his area. You're not going to have a whole bunch of money heading down to Rome for building projects or whatever. Whatever they raise for church things is going to stay in their area. But, there's more to it than that. I mean, there's reasons why people would also follow Martin Luther. His church is going to be a bit different. Are you ready? His church is going to be a bit different. What kinds of things are going to be different in that church? Well, for one, this is a key one. And watch how this plays out. Within the Catholic Church, and still very much today, back then also, if you wanted to be a priest, a monk, or any of the positions above that, all the way up to Pope, what did they have to say about marriage? What do you think? Sophia, could you be married and be a pope? Could you be married and be a monk? Could you be married and be a priest? No, 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 no. And who could change that if they were ever going to change that? Who has the authority within the Catholic Church to change something like that? The Pope. Has the Pope ever changed that? No, the closest they've come today is there's some parts of South America where there are not enough priests. And so they've actually allowed some of the people to do some of the priest work even if they're a man that's married. It's a little bit different. But put this down. In the Catholic Church, no, you're not supposed to get married if you're going to be an official within, the Catholic Church, like a priest or a monk or a nun for females. Okay? What about Martin Luther? Well, I'll tell you what. When he opens up the book, the Bible and so forth, he doesn't see language that clearly states you can't get married. And so he's like, well, if I don't see it there, then that means that I can get married. Take a look at the picture. He got married. He went from being a monk with no wife and no kids to having a wife and kids. And how many wives did he have? This is a trick question. What is the answer to this riddle? The wife that Martin Luther had was none. The wife that Martin Luther had was none. Solve the riddle. How could he have no wives if he's got a wife? Have you solved it? Yes? She used to be. Very good. N-U-N. His wife was a Catholic nun. Okay? And in that area, she's like, okay, I'm going along with the whole Martin Luther, the Lutheran Church and so forth. And so she and Martin Luther got married and they had kids. You got that? So that was one of the differences. And within Protestant churches, pretty much, I don't think there's any exception. The leaders or priests, pastors, and what have you, they have the permission to get married and have kids and so forth. They look at it as though they can still do their responsibility as a leader in the community, the religious community, and also be married and have kids and so forth. Okay? Got that? Now, some other things, let's see how far we're going to get on that. Yeah. Some other things that they kind of moved away from. Put this down. In Lutheran churches, so we got that difference. In Lutheran churches, here's one. Let's see if we can figure this one out. Martin Luther's going to go, I don't see anything in the Bible that says you need to be around these things or pray in close proximity to these things. In fact, so many of these things are fake, and they're just a really scam way of making money for stuff. Raise your hand if you figured out what I'm talking about, these things. Yes? What are those things? The bones, the relics, yeah. So write that down. In the Lutheran Church, no relics. And some of the churches, those Protestant churches, Lutheran Church and some others that we'll be talking about later on, they looked at it and said, we don't need that whole art thing either. So you look in some of the churches like in Northern Europe that went Protestant, they're going to be taking out art or reducing the amount of art. So you're not going to see lots and lots and lots of art. What you might see in one of those Protestant churches, you go in and it's like, well, there's a podium. I wonder what happens there. Oh, the pastor comes up and he opens the book and he starts speaking from the podium. Okay, I guess that's where our attention needs to be focused. Got it? So less ornate, less stuff. Okay? Here's another thing that you also would see. You can write this down. Remember how we talked about in the Catholic Church, sometimes people would not only be close to the bones of some very important saint or some important, disciple, they would make their prayers through that saint all the way up to heaven. Martin Luther's like, we don't need all those saints. You can write that down. We don't need all those saints. You don't need saint this and saint that and saint this and saint that. If you have something important to talk about with God, where should you take that prayer? Through a saint? No. Just straight up there. Yeah, just straight up. Yeah, so it's a very interesting thing. So for example, the Mother Mary, and the Madonna and all those art and picture and things and prayers and so forth having to do with the Mother Mary, you don't see that so much in the Lutheran Church or in Protestant churches. It's not like they disrespect her. It's it's got a whole different role. It's a very important role within the Catholic Church, not so much in the Protestant churches. Okay? So, those are some key differences. And some people may go, well, it's a little of this, a little of that. Why do people get upset about it? Well, I'll tell you what. The church was very, 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 very powerful. Very, very important. Next time we'll talk about John Calvin, who comes up with another Protestant version of Christianity. Okay? Perfect. Wipe her down.